Hello and welcome to another episode of Las Platicas. Kristen, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode. Like Sarah said, Las Platicas is a show hosted by Comadres y Comics, where we meet with creators and friends to to talk about upcoming projects, events, and all around awesome news with Latinx and women in the comic community. Today, we're so excited because we have the pleasure of having Debbie Lynn Smith, founder of Kymera Press, with us. Kymera Press is a book publishing company that strives to give women creators and artists a venue where they can create the women-friendly comics that both men and women can enjoy. In doing so, they promise to portray their female characters in a realistic fashion without relying on impossible and, of course, come on, admit it, sometimes quite ridiculous physical characteristics to get a reader's attention. Kymera Press is the company behind both Mary Shelley Presents and Dragons by the Yard, both books that we absolutely loved on past episodes. Joining us as well is author Nancy Holder, a 5-time winner of the Bram Stoker Award from the Horror Writers Association and co-creator of Mary Shelley Presents. We are so excited to have you both here with us today, and we can't wait to hear all the awesome, amazing things that you have to share with us. So welcome, Nancy and Debbie.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Oh, so excited. Oh my gosh. I mean, we're big fans, like we said. Amazing work. We love the comic books, and it's just really great to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's exciting to be here. I mean, I heard the reviews that you did on our 2 books, and I was like, I have to talk to these women.
I started crying. Thank you.
Yes.
Debbie wrote, we're on Slack, so she got me on Slack, and she said, you have to go listen to this, it'll bring tears to your eyes, and it did.
Aww.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I love it when we make them cry.
Well, it's really nice to know that what we're doing is not only appreciated, but understood.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Those of you who are watching now may actually notice that Jen isn't here. She had an unforeseen kind of thing pop up today, and she's going to try to make it, but we're going to go ahead and go through without her, and if she's able to join us, then she will go ahead and do that. But we're going to go ahead and get started, and we always like to start with our guests by having them share their quote-unquote origin story of how they entered into the comic industry. So I want to have you both introduce yourselves by talking a little bit about how you began your comics career and how you transitioned into comics from writing novels, or in your case, Debbie, being a television writer. So why don't we go ahead and let you start, Debbie? What is your origin story?
Okay, yes, I was a television writer, and I wrote for shows like Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and Touched by an
loved that
Angel.
show.
And so I was doing well, but I ended up getting quite ill. I contracted a rare lung disease.
Oh, wow.
With a very long name. And it took away basically one lung. So I no longer had the stamina to be on staff. I mean, when you're working on staff, you're putting in long hours and a lot of work. And so I had to reinvent myself, and I did a lot of different things. And finally, my agent said to me, you know, this pilot that you wrote shouldn't go to waste. Why don't you turn it into a graphic novel? And I was like, you know, I haven't read comics in a long time, but last time I read them, I wasn't a fan. So I went to my local comic book store, and that's Alternate Reality Comics here in Vegas. And I said to Ralph, you know, I'm thinking about writing a graphic novel. I haven't read them in a long time. Can you give me something that's not superheroes, that's strong women, you know, in the comics? And he gave me a whole list of things. Saga was on it. Lazarus was on it. Why Last Man Standing was on it. And I just love them. I fell absolutely in love. So I took a year and I studied scripts and I went to conventions and so that's how I got into it. That I turned that pilot into my graphic novel, Gates Midnight.
That is amazing. That is a great origin story.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Nancy, let's hear your origin story.
Okay, well, I had been a writer for a long, long time, what we call a prose writer. I wrote short stories and I wrote novels, and I started working on the TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I did a lot of episode guides and sort of had a lot of popular culture kind of connections. So I always went to Comic-Con in San Diego. I moved from San Diego, but I lived there most of my life. And just so I had this pop culture kind of life, and I was a comic book freak. When I was little, I had subscriptions to so many comic books, and my dad was in the Navy, and we moved to Japan, and they threw out all my comic books. And I swear I'd probably be the richest person you know. They hadn't thrown out my comic books, but they did. So, but life went on. I wasn't writing comics. I was very pop culture, but I wasn't in comics. And then I sort of met, after you meet people as you go on in your writing life, named Joe Gentile, and he owns a company called Moonstone Books. And Moonstone does a lot of pulp fiction and a lot of comics. And so he asked me, would you like to write Domino Lady? Now, Domino Lady is a little bit of an issue for us because I brought her, actually, he gave me this present. This is Domino Lady. Ba-ba-ba-boom. She started in the 30s, and she was one of the first women. She wasn't a superhero, but she was a sleuth. And she, this might sound familiar to you. Her father was gunned down, and then she became a detective who would help right the wrongs of other people. And so by day, she was this socialite. She went to Berkeley, and she spoke foreign languages, and she knew jujitsu. And at night, she was this sort of cat burglar kind of sneaky woman, and she would mesmerize men with her beautiful, sexy body and then knock them out and then do whatever she had to do. She would steal letters to keep women from getting blackmailed, and she'd steal beautiful giant diamonds and gems and all kinds of stuff. And from Domino Lady, I've always wanted to write more comics, and then Debbie and I got together. We knew each other in lots of ways, but I think we met first in a horror bookstore in Los Angeles called Dark Delicacies.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
As we were signing.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so from that came Debbie invited me to write for Mary Shelley Presents. And so now I'm a Mary Shelley person.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh, that is super cool.
Thank you.
I wrote down Domino Lady here because this is the first time I've ever heard of her. And yes, sounds super familiar. And I would love to learn more about her. I am especially a character that started so far back.
Yeah, in the 30s. She
Yeah,
had
that's it.
six or nine, I can't remember, of her own adventures. She was the star of her own pulp fiction. She was in books like Saucy Adventures and yeah, but she was a kick-ass babe even back then.
Yeah.
I think Moonstone credit, they also did Honey West.
Yes.
Yeah, and I grew up loving the Honey West show, so I of course got the Honey West comics, but yeah, it was great to see that.
Right now I'm writing pulp for them, and I'm doing a Kolchak and Green Hornet crossover. So,
Oh, nice.
Oh no, that is so cool.
I love Kolchak, so I'm very
I love Kolchak. You know Dan Curtis. He's the one who put Kolchak up. Yeah, with Richard Matheson and Dan Curtis. They worked together a lot.
Those were the days, darn it.
Yes.
I got my teeth in here.
Well, ladies, Comadres y Comics was created with the goal of highlighting Latinx and women creators, characters, and fans in order to promote diversity and representation in comics. It seems Kymera Press was created for similar reasons. What have you found most challenging about finding space in a traditionally male-dominated industry?
You know, I had to think about this for a while. Yeah, I formed Kymera Press for that specific purpose, to give women creators and artists a chance to show what they could do. I think that the hardest thing I have faced is finding an audience, because there is a built-in bias about women. And as a matter of fact, I can't tell you, I've heard so many things at my table, and one of the most disturbing was a man saying, I didn't know a woman wrote Frankenstein.
What? Wow, that's
And that's the kind of thing that there's a built-in bias that women, you know, can't either write comics. I was told in the very beginning, I was told that I needed to at least have one man, you know, in working with us, like a famous artist or something, to be successful. And they might be true. I mean, we're not making money, especially right now, you know, but we're still putting out great product. We have a title called Ivory Ghost that's being sold in the Smithsonian National Natural History Museum. That's really hard to say. Yeah, because it's a murder mystery set against the illegal ivory trade. And, you know, I won an Irwin Award here in California for, I mean, there in California, I'm no longer there, in California for Gates of Midnight. We were nominated for a Scribe Award for our title, Pet Noir. So we have to go outside of the comics industry in order to kind of gain some momentum so that people will take us seriously.
God, that sounds so difficult. You know, obviously you're tabling at conventions, and then they tell you something like, "Oh, I didn't know a woman wrote Frankenstein." That's kind of sad and a little depressing. But I'm so glad you guys are in the fight, and I'm so glad you guys are highlighting female writers, artists, letters. It's just amazing.
Well, one of the really cool things that happened was at San Diego Comic-Con, I actually was able to get a panel, which is very hard to do. And it was on Mary Shelley. And we had a whole group of us, Nancy was there. So the panel met outside of the meeting room, and we walked into the meeting room, which was pretty big. And it was filled to standing room only.
Whoa.
I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. But we just all looked at each other with, whoa. And then after, people were just coming up and saying, this is the best panel I've ever attended at Comic-Con. And so I feel like, and the panel was on the relevance of Mary Shelley today. So I really feel like, you know, the message is getting out there. It's just we have to be patient and keep doing what we're doing.
That sounds amazing.
Do you have anything to add, Nancy?
I guess I wrote answers. I took my question. I expect to get an A on this, by the way. But I think the thing that cracks me up is, like, when we're at San Diego Comic-Con, because that is the convention Debbie and I usually see each other at. And it's really cool because a lot of the writers and artists fly in for Comic-Con, and we hang out together. And my thing is, if one of us lifts the boat rises. So
That's right.
we're always very, very supportive of each other. But I have noticed that sometimes men come up to the booth we're very respectful toward what we do. And we start out that way. So we kind of have that filter, but you can still get men who will explain the comic book industry to us, or they'll just interrupt us. We'll be talking, they're just, and they have some great story that is immaterial to the discussion, but they mansplain and they don't realize they do it. And it's kind of like, you're sitting there like, just buy the comic book and go away. It's true. But the other hand is there are a lot of people who have gone to Debbie and said, why don't you have any men? Like giving her the business about why did you have only women? And frankly, there aren't that many slots in the comic book world for writers and for artists. And the fact that Debbie has highlighted getting women into the business is wonderful. And so rather than be criticized for it, like what's wrong with men? It's not anything to do with that. It's giving women a shot. And so that is something that's a little frustrating, that somehow if we don't have any men, that why not? And because we just don't. And,
yeah, I mean, they
so yeah.
And they think that we don't like men. And
Yeah.
I'm married and my husband works behind the table with me, and Nancy's married and she's totally in love with her husband.
Yeah.
We love men, but this wasn't about that. And I'll say something else too. I happen to be a fan of burlesque.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a problem with sex in comics. If you want to draw the unrealistic bodies, that's more power to you. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be doing that. I'm saying that's not what I want to do. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
So I'm not on a crusade except to get women recognized for the incredible work that they do. I mean, most of the women who work for us have worked for Marvel and DC, IDW, Dynamite. I mean, they're amazing women.
That is awesome. That's super awesome. I think that's really great. Like I'm just
Well, I can relate to a lot of what you both said with regards to men's reactions and comments to you, because I am also a retailer. I'm co-owner of Heidi Ho Comics in Santa Monica. And when I first got into the business and started, you don't know how many times men would come to me and ask me a question, and then I would answer it, and I would watch them turn right around and approach one of my male employees and ask them the exact same.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And it always did my heart good when they were like, I don't know, you should be asking her.
And I love how you were talking about, Debbie, you were saying that you had fallen out of love of comics, and then you went and you researched and you read comics and researched some more. And I love that. I love that about women. We're so just like, we need to know everything.
Well, you should have seen our originally for Mary Shelley. We wanted to do a Mary Shelley Frankenstein mashup kind of graphic novel. Nancy went off and learned everything she could about Mary Shelley, including reading different versions of Frankenstein and all of that kind of stuff. I was like, oh my God, we couldn't figure out how to make it work. And that's how we ended up with Mary Shelley Presents and the Victorian women horror writers. But yeah, research queens here.
That's awesome. Well, that's kind of a nice transition for the next question. While reading both Mary Shelley Presents and Dragons by the Yard, we all found that there were aspects of many of the women characters that resonated with us. So we were wondering, what is your process when selecting stories to publish under the Kymera umbrella and making sure that it fits your mission?
You want to talk about Mary Shelley Presents, Nancy?
Sure. One of the most important parts is they have to work visually. If we can't make it work in a comic book form, we can't do it. And that's been frustrating sometimes. I found a story written by a Ukrainian writer, and it was out of copyright, which is always one of our issues. And I actually did not realize you could spell her last name more than one way. So I searched to see if there were any translations and didn't find any. So I hired a translator in Russia to translate the story properly. So we would own a translation of it that we could print in the comic book. And later on, I discovered, I didn't even mention this to Debbie because it didn't matter anymore, but there were translations of it. But the catch for us is that then the translation is copyrighted. So we have wanted very much to go outside of, we sort of have this, you know, somebody was talking about English majors, like it's the English major women in English that we have had so far, but we want to go outside of that culture and find books or short stories written by women from other groups, other languages. I asked a friend who's from India, are there any short stories written by women writers in India that we could use to illustrate for Mary Shelley? But the catch is we have to know what it's like before we get too involved in it, because it has to work as a comic. If it doesn't work, then we can't use it. And that's what happened to the Ukrainian story. It read really cool, like, wow. And I even bought books on Russian art because we're nerds. But I know about the history of the Russian Revolution, which has nothing to do with the story. So, but anyway, the biggest part is it has to work in the comic book medium. It has to be something you can compress and that you can show with sequential art. And if that doesn't work, no matter how amazing the story, we can't use it. So that's kind of my thing.
We also look at the stories to make sure the women aren't, you know, doormats or anything like that in the stories. So, and that's what we look for. And most of the stories that we've done have either been something that I came up with or something that was brought to us at Comic-Con.
Oh, awesome. So there were actually creators that have approached you at your table with work. Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
That is really cool. And you know what? I really appreciate the fact that you guys take the time to make sure that the women aren't portrayed as doormats, because we just read a book and it was a little bit difficult to read because there was so much kind of like abusive women in there. So like it really, it means a lot to portray women stronger and not, you know, just like the damsel in distress or the victim that, you know, or the one that needs to be saved or whatever. So it's really great to read stories like that. And I'd like you guys to welcome Jen. Jen made it. Yay!
And I'm here. I appeared like mysteriously. Late but fashionably. So, you know, it's just
like
that's
magic.
Just how it be.
Yeah, and as Sarah said, Jen is the person who played by the art to us, and she just was like, you gotta read this book, you gotta read this book. She in fact forced Sarah to read it on the train ride home from the convention she bought it at.
Yeah,
thank you, Jen. Thank you.
Yeah, it
You're
was
welcome.
the convention at Long Beach, so we took the train down, you know, for parking reasons or whatever, and then at the end of the convention we rode the train together, and I was like, oh, I'm finally gonna rest, because you know conventions take a lot out of you. And and then Jen's like, you gotta read this.
I had literally just finished reading it too, and then I was just like, Sarah, you have to share with me just what I felt reading this book. So read it right now. And she did, and I'm very grateful that she did and that she liked it.
Well, we just finished the pencils on the 6th issue, so we're going to be doing a Kickstarter next year. So.
Oh my God, I'm super, super excited. You definitely have my money because I have been itching to read more about this story since I picked up issues 1 and 2 at Long Beach Comic Con.
Okay.
But moving on with the questions, we've talked about representation in the industry, but the flip side of that is access. Can you talk about what you do at Kymera to create or encourage access for marginalized groups as an audience for your books?
As an audience, you know, I looked at this question and I thought about it a lot, and I guess I don't know what it means. We don't have an advertising budget, so we can't advertise. We do go to large conventions like San Diego. We have a permanent booth there. Yay!
Oh,
Yes, but we go to the smaller conventions like Long Beach. And we do CherylCon, which was a one-day convention.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, at Fox Hills Mall.
Yeah.
And so that's basically what we do in the way of marketing. So I'm not really sure what the answer to that question is.
Well, I would say that counts, but one of the ways that we've kind of done that is like going to those smaller cons, like ShiroCon, like you said, that was a Culver City, but there's a town called Hemet where we've been to conventions and stuff like that. That's a very large, like Latino families and stuff like that. But like those conventions, I would say going to those smaller conventions definitely counts. But also, like, have you guys thought about putting your books in the library, in public libraries and stuff like that?
We've actually been working on. I know we are in a couple of public libraries, but we are working on. We got this whole thing from our library about what you can do to get people to order your books, because you can't just bring them in and give them. They'll sell them in the giveaway. Okay. So yeah, we've been working on trying to get reviews and things like that in different publications in order to get them put into the library.
Okay.
And we're also on Comixology. Not all of our books are there yet. We need to work on that. But Comixology is another place where you can get them cheaper, much cheaper than the real thing. Of course, you have to have the technology for it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's just access in itself is a barrier to some people that can get comics or like books and stuff like that. Another thing that we personally have done is go what was Bernice's thing? A place called home.
A place called home.
Yeah, so like not just like public libraries and stuff like that or local comic shops, but there's like reading literacy centers and stuff like that as well. And like we've seen that with a friend. She holds like small like giveaways to the community to encourage reading and literacy in the community around her. So that's kind of like centers and stuff like that. It isn't so much as a critique as just we want to know kind of what creators do, because a lot of the creators that we have interviewed have done things like that, where they donate books to like kind of like educational centers and stuff like that.
Our big thing is we have been donating books to Gates of Midnight is about a female combat medic suffering from PTSD.
Oh, wow.
And we have a lot of female combat medic fans of that book.
Oh, wow.
So we usually send boxes of comics when they're deployed.
That's awesome.
That we send them to give to the soldiers and that sort of thing. And then what did we do, Nancy? The charities we did with you.
Well, I was going to say there was an event, now pre-pandemic.
Oh no, definitely
years ago.
Bust of Mary Shelley. I live near Seattle now, and a bust of Mary Shelley was presented to the Museum of Popular Culture up here in Seattle at the Seattle Center, and we donated comics to that event, but we also, Debbie wrote, Kymera Press wrote a check for a local program in Seattle that puts books in the hands of elementary school kids who don't have a lot of books. And Kymera Press stepped right up, and we gave money for them to buy books. Hopefully they'll buy comic books. Restrictions put on it, but we did donate comic books to the Museum of Popular Culture. I think MoPop is what it's called.
Yeah,
I can't remember if it's culture or arts, but yes, we have donated.
And we also did that one at San Diego Comic-Con.
That's right. That's right. There's a blood drive, the Robert H. Heinlein blood drive every year at Comic-Con, huge event, and we gave tons of comics to them. And also the Browncoats, who are fans of Firefly, we donated comics to them, and I signed them in the Firefly booth for they pick a charity every year. One of the actors who was on Firefly will pick a charity for that year. And they have, for example, they've at least twice, Adam Baldwin's charity is for children of fallen Marines and first responders to go to college.
Oh,
and
wow.
so we donated books, and I signed them on behalf of that charity. And then Nathan Fillion has a charity with another writer where I think it's called Each One Book One or something like that. And it's to put books in the hands of kids who've never owned a book in their lives. So we've been very active, and I know we also did something at Long Beach, but I can't remember what it was.
I can't either.
You have done a lot to give access to people. So
well, you know,
I didn't realize
no, please, we want to know everything you've done. We want you to have all the accolades because we do like you're publishing a lot. We love the stories that you're putting out, and we think that they deserve to be shared with everybody who can get them or who doesn't even know that they need them.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is it's been so long since we've been to any of this.
Kind of, you know what?
It's like
valid.
Right. Oh yeah, there's the world somewhere. I don't know, a year, but it's out there. So.
Yes.
Oh yeah, definitely. So we've discussed diversity on the page, but diversity and representation of creators is also important. In your opinion, how could the comic book industry facilitate the growth of members of marginalized groups as writers and artists? What is your advice for these groups to enter the industry?
You know, I think that the way it's twofold. I don't know how Nancy feels about this, but I feel like number one, instead of always going to the most famous guy in the room, to actually look and see what's out there and to be, you know, I'm not saying that the most famous guy in the world doesn't need to make a living. They do, okay? But it's cheaper to make comics if you go to the people who don't have, you know, that proven track record. And advice, especially for women, they do not tend to put their work out there. They're afraid, they're shy, whatever. Get it up on DeviantArt. I go to DeviantArt and I look through things when I'm looking for a specific kind of, like we needed something really specific for Ivory Goats. It's a very realistic thing. In Dragons, it's bright and it's fantasy and it's, you know, I mean, it's completely different. Mary Shelley Presents Amelia Wu. What can I say? Amelia does Gates of Midnight as well, and she's been with me from the very beginning. So, you know, put your stuff up on DeviantArt. There's also a agency called Class House. They represent artists, and that's how I found 3 of our artists live in Brazil. I've never met them. Let's see, one lives in the Philippines, one is in Italy, one is in Ireland, one is in Spain, and then we have some in the United States. So honestly, I don't even know what color they are, what nationality, what religion, what, you know, I only know they identify as women. I don't care. What I care about is the art. And also look for women who run businesses. because they're more likely to take and there's a lot of them popping up. Read the guidelines before you submit. Read the guidelines first and then follow them. So that would be what about you, Nancy?
I had a couple of specific suggestions. The Horror Writers Association offers scholarships and mentorship programs. We're both in, it's called HWA, horror.org is how you find it online. And they give out scholarships every year. I recently stopped teaching at an MFA program, but at least 3 of my women students got scholarships for like $2,500, and they applied it toward their tuition. But horror writers, there are a lot of comic book people in writing horror, and you can find people to work with, or they maybe have a call out, or to mentor. They have a mentorship program in HWA, and you can hook up with another writer or an artist and get it going. It's mostly for writers. So I did have a kind of a weird suggestion, but I came on to it. So I don't know if you know this, but Vincent Price donated vast quantities of his art to the East Los Angeles Community College. And I've never been, I'm dying to go. When I was in HWA's Los Angeles chapter, I wanted to have a field trip. We never got it together. But the Vincent Price Art Museum has internships, and they have different kinds of, like the Getty has a sister internship. If you go to East Los Angeles Community College, they have an internship. But I think this would be an interesting way for artists to get a foot in the door. It's kind of a sideways thing because it's an art gallery, but Vincent Price, of course, is one of the kings of horror. So you may find people who share the love that Vincent Price had for horror through that. His daughter, Victoria Price, lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico. She's very active, and she's an artist herself. And she has she's selling Vincent Price memorabilia and books. And I'm on her mailing list, and she gives talks, and I've met her, and she's not specifically looking for artists, but to start making these connections, like to join the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America, to join different groups and find out about people looking for people who want to write or who want to be artists, to sort of think farther out. Like Debbie's saying, a lot of the way we come in is we go outside of comic books and come back into comic books. So I can't say enough good things about the Horror Writers Association. They're very, very supportive, and that would be a good way in.
One other thing is
really good. Oh, sorry.
There's a place called Full Sail Academy. Now, it is a school, but they actually have a sequential art degree. And I just had a woman submit to me who just graduated, and I was like, I'm going to use her for something. I don't know what yet, because we're not doing anything, I mean, we're pretty much shut down, but yeah, I'm going to use her for something, because it was not only she wrote me a cover letter, she went to the website and read the guidelines, read everything about the website. She knew who she was submitting to, and she had good art. So it was like, okay, I got to use this woman.
That is super cool.
No, Nancy, I really like that piece of advice about going at it sideways, because it's not something that a lot of people think of. A lot of people like, what's the direct route? But sometimes the direct route is not the easiest or the most convenient. You kind of have to go at it sideways. So I do love that piece of advice.
Thank you.
So you've both been fortunate to work with many different mediums of writing throughout your careers, working as a novelist, television writers, and now graphic novelists. What are the differences, if any, you find between them from a creator standpoint?
Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, I wrote my answer. But what I want to say is true. As I said, my favorite medium is comic book writing, and it's the hardest because you have to compress everything and you have to think visually, and you have to also, to me, the comic book script is a letter to your artist and to your art team. So you're talking to the team and you're saying, I want this to look like the Titanic. If you've seen the movie Titanic, this is how it should look. This is what I want to show. This is what I'm trying to get across. And in addition, you have to write the stage directions and the dialogue. But I love it. I think it's the best. It's so fun. And I have to give kudos to Debbie because she's my editor and she's an amazing editor. She is in television. She hasn't left. She just break and she's going back in, but she is a good editor, and she'll say, well, can you punch this part up? Or one of the, of course, most important things is where the pages turn. You have to make sure your surprise is on the side that you turn, and all these kinds of very detailed situations or problems that you have in comics are specific to comics. I have a degree in mass communications, and part of my degree was film and production and that kind of stuff. And you could apply so much of that to comic books. But what I love about writing comics is that people in comics tend to be kind of irreverent and kind of funny and kind of sassy and not too straight-laced. And that, I love that. I love the whole world of comics.
That is so cool.
I totally agree that comics is the hardest form in which to write. I love writing for television. I love doing that. And I had a double lung transplant 3 years ago, and I'm all healed and back, and I'm feeling more energy than I have since I was first diagnosed with the illness. So I am starting to go back into that world. But I have to say, I really like the medium of comics so much, and I like editing, but there are so many people who think that they can just write comics. Okay.
Yes.
And a lot of, I made a mistake in the beginning of just always asking novelist friends of mine. And it was a real struggle, and it still is to this day. I mean, some of them get it and some of them don't, because they don't know comics and they don't really want to continue in comics. So they just want to do their thing and be done with it. And the people who, I mean, it's like Nancy said, what you have to write well is dialogue. The rest of it, you're writing to your team and you're saying, this is what it looks like and this is what it has to be. And it's not like writing a novel. You know, you've got to describe everything that you want to have. If you want the elephants to have little ears, you better tell me these elephants have little ears. Otherwise, you know, there's going to be a lot of changes in the art, and that's expensive. So,
oh yes, yes.
So I have a question. So you, Debbie yourself, you're an editor. You're the main editor for Kymera Press.
yes.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what it is that you do and what you would recommend to creators or writers who kind of wonder what it is exactly that why they need an editor? Please give a good reason to why people need editing. I know why they need an editor, but sometimes some creators don't realize why they need an editor.
Okay, for creators are very close. I mean, anytime you write something, whether it's a short story, a novel, a television show, you get very close to the material that you can't see what you're missing. So, yeah, I have, one of my writers is also a screenwriter, and I have the hardest time getting her to tell me exactly what she's looking for. You can't just put in a plane. You know, she wants a specific plane. So if you want a specific plane, you need to say it's a Cessna 2 whatever with a, that's been used for Red Cross things, and it's been shot at, so it has a couple of bullet holes in it. You need to go into that level of detail, and an editor looks for that. Okay, they look for the detail that you've left out. Number 2, too much dialogue. Okay, this is a huge thing. If you have a lot of dialogue, and so many people are married to their dialogue, you cover up the art. And the writer needs to understand the art is what tells the story, not the words.
Right.
Okay. This medium is the only medium that does that. Okay. So you need to cut your dialogue to the very basic dialogue.
Right.
And you need an editor to help you do that because you're too married to your dialogue. Okay. And then you need an editor throughout the whole thing to make sure that the script and what's on the page is coming out to be the same thing. Now, I've hired art directors to help me with that, so I can't do it all. We have 5 titles, numerous issues. I can't do it all.
Thank you. So that was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Good.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you've heard our previous episodes, sometimes we say the editors are the unsung heroes of comic books.
I agree.
Yes.
I'm not saying that for me, but saying the editors of all these other great books.
Yeah, definitely. So on our podcast, we have a segment called Chisme de la Semana, and translated, that means gossip of the week. So we want to hear your chisme. What are the stories, comics, or projects that you both are working on currently that you can share, or maybe something on the back burner that you're hoping to get out here pretty soon when you can?
Okay.
Well, I've never stopped loving Mary Shelley. I actually went to Italy and went to the places where she lived. Which
Oh, wow.
I'm telling you, research queen.
I know, nerd. But anyway, I'm writing a short story called Cat Father, and it's about the Mary Shelley's creature adopts a cat. And,
Oh my gosh.
and I'm also
Okay, that's the scariest thing I've ever heard.
He's a misunderstood being, but anyway. And I'm also co-editing an anthology for a charter school in San Diego called Canyon Crest Academy. They have a creative writing club, and I'm one of the co-editors with Greg Van Eekhout and another writer named Kathleen Krevitt, and we're editing that anthology and putting stories in. And by happenstance, don't know how it happened, we're including an entire issue of Mary Shelley Presents as our contribution. So
that's awesome.
It'll be in black and white.
Yeah, it's black and white.
So if we go to Lori Foster's excellent inks, that's what we'll be publishing in the book.
Very cool. And I'm writing Kolchak, so I'm very stoked about Kolchak.
I want to write Kolchak.
Don't feel it. We'll go talk. So.
Okay. All right. Oh, so for us, we have, Dragons by the Yard 5 and 6, which we are going to be doing a Kickstarter. I think we're pushing it until February now. And, but it's very exciting. We have the scripts for 7 and 8 done, and 9 will complete the series. And then we'll be putting that into a graphic novel. And we have issues 3 and 4 of Ivory Ghost finished. We do wish to continue with Mary Shelley Presents. We just have to get out of this pandemic and start having conventions again, so we can start bringing in a little bit of money. Let's see, I just finished a total rewrite of the pilot for Gates of Midnight.
Oh, nice.
And I've sent that out to contests and to get some coverage. Coverage is when somebody reads your script and recommends it or not, because I'm going to start sending that out to producers. And I have a novel that I finished that I'm doing a small rewrite on. and I'm working on that too. So,
Very
Wow.
and
exciting.
of course, Gates. What am I saying? Gates. I finished issue 9, and I need to do the next 3. Issues. I need to write them, and then once the pandemic's over, we'll get Amelia Wu working on it again.
By
That
the way,
sounds-
it's Amelia WOO, and she's a goddess. So
She's a goddess, a
That's-
Brazilian goddess.
that is super
Nice.
cool. That's awesome. On our podcast, we have a segment called Juntos y Fuertes. It's a segment where we highlight noteworthy endeavors by members of marginalized groups that we think deserve support. Are there any projects or programs you'd like to plug?
I have one. There are these writing, and it's for writers, I know, but I'm a writer. There's these writing 6-week intensive called Clarion and Clarion West. I attended Clarion West, and Nancy used to teach at Clarion. One's in Seattle and one's in San Diego. Is it still in San Diego?
yeah, you see
Yeah.
San Diego.
Okay. And there is a scholarship fund for marginalized people to attend Clarion West. It's a 6-week intensive writing workshop for writers of speculative fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy. And you have a different teacher each week, okay? Award-winning writer or editor every week. And you have to write a short story a week. Now, if you're a writer, you know that scares the hell out of you, okay? But I did it. So anyhow, their scholarship is called the Octavia E. Butler Memorial Scholarship in the honor of Octavia Butler. I don't know if you know of her books, but they are amazing. She's an amazing writer. If you haven't read her, you should read her. And it's done by the Carl Brandon Society. Okay. So I would like to plug that because it really does help with what we were just talking about, getting marginalized writers a chance, you know, at this kind of an education, which was just completely changed the way I wrote.
That
That's
sounds
so cool.
awesome.
That does.
What do you have for us, Nancy?
I have a new anthology called Black Panther Tales of Wakanda. And it's
Oh.
a groundbreaking lineup of authors from across the African diaspora who are writing original short stories set in the world of Wakanda, home of the Black
wow.
Panther, King T'Challa, may he R.I.P. And I want to plug one of the authors in that anthology. Her name is Linda Addison, and she identifies as African American. She is the first African American recipient of the Bram Stoker Award for Poetry. She has won 6 Bram Stoker Awards. She is also the first African American to win the Lifetime Achievement Award for the horror writers. And she mentors people like crazy. She's received a special award for how many people she mentors. So her name, Linda Addison. So it's Black Panther Tales of Wakanda. You can find it on that big website that sells books that starts with an A, or many stores, I'm sure, that are indie stores. So, and also I'd like to plug in San Diego. I hope it's still there. My home comic book store was Kamikaze.
Yeah.
So
That's super cool.
It's excellent. So we are coming up to the end of this interview. Where can listeners follow Kymera's projects and future projects? Any websites, social media?
Okay, KymeraPress.com, and that's KymeraPress.com is our website. And you can find all of our products there that we have. And we do have social media, but on the website, we have a newsletter sign up. So you can sign up for newsletters, and I don't inundate your box. I truly don't. I'm lucky if I get one out a month. So, but that will keep you up with everything that we're doing.
Excellent.
And what about you,
And I'm
Nancy?
on
What can we?
Facebook. I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter
Oh.
and
I'm on Twitter as Nancy Holder. I'm on Facebook as Nancy Holder and Nancy Holder Fans. I have a website that I continually forget to go to, but I'm not on Instagram or TikTok or whatever's new. I'm an old user person, but what I do love is that if somebody on the team has something on one of those platforms, the rest of us boost it. So
Yes.
we are a sisterhood, definitely a sisterhood at Kymera, and that is just awesome. In fact, I'm going to cry, but we root for each other, and that is so awesome. We are not in competition with anybody. You know, one of us does well, everybody does well. Like you say, juntos y fuertes. So we are more fuerte when we are juntos.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I learned so much. And yes, I'm just so excited and pumped. I want to go check out that anthology. Everything was amazing. Thank you for sharing what an editor does and why it's so important. I learned so much there, and it was such a pleasure, ladies. So much. We love your books, and we are so happy that you came on the show in Las Platicas for our YouTube channel. We have been your host. I'm Sarah.
I'm Kristen.
And I'm Jen.
And don't
Thank
forget
you.
to like and subscribe. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.